prospect of the Formula 1 grid getting bigger in the near future seems excitingly realistic, and there are more contenders to land a new entry than you might think. Andretti's grand announcement of its tie-up with General Motors and Cadillac was a head-turning public declaration of intent ahead of the FIA formally opening the process to evaluate potential new entries. That was met with a swift message from F1 that a number of conversations are taking place, indicating there are multiple contenders and some are just conducting their business in private. This was interpreted by some as the latest tit-for-tat in a long standoff between F1 and Andretti, but it seems to be rooted in fact as well, because the options to be F1's next new team do look plentiful. F1's increasing popularity and its profile in the United States, combined with significant developments like the budget cap and new engine regulations in 2026, have made it more attractive than ever in the modern era. We've already focused on Andretti and Cadillac in a standalone video that you should check out if you haven't already seen. Now it's time to assess that project's competition for an extra slot on the grid. And as we run through these contenders, let us know in the comments who you'd like to see join F1, and please like this video, subscribe and turn on notifications as well. Ford is one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world and the second biggest in the United States, but it has a slightly odd F1 history. Its most successful period was with the Ford-badged Cosworth DFV engines, while its only out-and-out works team, Jaguar, was an expensive failure from 2000 to 2004. Ford is understood to have engaged in discussions with F1 behind the scenes, with inquiries centred on the next set of engine regulations from 2026. The likely attraction is that Ford wants to cash in on F1's growth, especially in the US, and its stance on sustainability, with a new engine formula that will have an enhanced electrical component and 100% sustainable fuels from 2026. We were told as far back as the 2022 Japanese Grand Prix last October that Ford was asking a lot of questions, and that something could happen after 2026 if that comes around too soon. Ford is believed to be more interested in a sponsorship or engine branding deal than seeking team equity or having a technological input into an engine program, and Red Bull seems the likeliest candidate for any partnership at this stage. If that can't happen for whatever reason, then perhaps Ford will find another way onto the grid, and it's absolutely the sort of manufacturer that F1 would love to have as a full-on works team. But there has been no official word or confirmation so far from Ford, but at the same time, no response or denial to a range of speculation. Porsche still views F1 as an attractive option despite its high-profile failure to do a deal with Red Bull to join the grid in 2026. The Volkswagen Group brand had what it called a handshake agreement with Red Bull for a partnership to coincide with the new engine regulations. But Red Bull refused to accept the type of deal that Porsche desired, as Porsche wanted to buy half of the organisation that designs and builds Red Bull's F1 cars, while Red Bull just wants a partner that will pay a lot of money to brand the engine built by Red Bull powertrains. Porsche has told us that it's still examining possible alternatives, with Williams believed to be among them, and AlphaTauri, which Red Bull keeps saying is not for sale, Haas and even McLaren all suggested to us as options as well. Porsche insists we do not see ourselves as being under any time pressure, but having failed to register its interest in the 2026 engine regulations by the FIA's initial deadline, the likelihood now is that any Porsche F1 project will need to come as a team, and or piggyback onto someone else's engine program, maybe VW's sister brand Audi's. One of the more abstract candidates, in that he doesn't seem to have a specific proposal but claims to have a concrete interest, is billionaire Calvin Lowe. F1 has always attracted individuals with either a lot of personal wealth, great connections, or both, and Lowe is exactly that type of prospective team owner. Lowe was speculated to be the money man behind Doralton Capital's takeover of Williams in 2020, and he has since confirmed he does have some kind of link to Williams through Doralton. It's unclear how much, but a small investment seems more likely, given Lowe now says he's been working with intermediaries who have been looking into options to set up a new F1 team or buy into an existing one should that not prove possible. Why Lowe has felt the need to talk so openly about this interest in the last few months, with several interviews with major news outlets like the BBC and Reuters, is something only he can answer. But it doesn't necessarily put a question mark over the legitimacy of his interest. Most likely, he's just making a point of it being public to dangle the line and see if anyone nibbles. But with the FIA set to put out a call for expressions of interest, perhaps Lowe finally has a real opportunity to up the ante. There have been rumours in F1 about Hyundai being genuinely interested in an engine program for a few months now, and we understand this interest is real. Any kind of Hyundai commitment would not be expected in the short term, and even readying an engine for 2026 might be too soon. Such a move would be a massive undertaking, given it would mark Hyundai's first foray into Grand Prix racing. While Hyundai has no F1 pedigree, it is a keen participant in motorsport using electric or hybrid powertrains, so far with production-based cars like the i20N in the WRC, which went hybrid for the first time in 2022, and also the Veloster N in the electric TCR series. And with F1's increasing global appeal and growth in the United States and Asia, plus a race in Seoul being a new F1 priority, it's easy to see why Hyundai is interested and maybe could even be tempted to go for it with a full team, not just an engine program. Throw in ex-Renault F1 boss Cyril Abiteboul being set to join Hyundai as its WRC team principal, and there are plenty of stars that align well enough to take this prospect seriously. The entities named here aren't the sort to take kindly to being speculated about, but they are not to be discounted as future F1 prospects. In early 2022, Dimitri Mazepin's Uralkali concern and Oliver Oak's Hitech organisation went through a significant amount of activity with the UK government's Registrar of Companies. Uralkali Racing Limited was incorporated in January at the same address as Hitech Grand Prix. 2 months later, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the departure of Mazepin's son Nikita from Haas and F1 along with Uralkali, an application was filed to dissolve Uralkali Racing. But around the same time, 2 other significant actions were taken. Hitech F1 Team Limited was incorporated, and Hitech Global Holdings Limited was set up to become the majority owner of Hitech Grand Prix. And for clarity, Hitech Grand Prix is the company that oversees Hitech's army of junior single-seater teams. Oaks and Hitech Global Holdings Limited were also the controlling parties of Hitech F1 Team, which was quickly renamed Hitech GP, separate to Hitech Grand Prix, and then in August that was renamed again to Hitech 26. So it's very easy to connect the dots there, especially as one of the requirements to lodge a formal expression of interest is to have an operating company incorporated. As for Uralkali and Mazepin, their interest in F1 team ownership goes back several years, to when they tried to buy Force India. They were also linked with a Haas takeover when Nikita drove for that team, and even if the various acts of company structuring were preemptive rather than a sign of anything imminent, it's at least fair to consider that evidence of an ongoing interest at that time. And with Mazepin a long-time partner of Oaks, collaboration would hardly be a surprise if or when the situation caused by Russia is settled and the FIA's position on outright Russian involvement in F1 changes. Honda officially quit F1 at the end of 2021, but clearly has been unable to let go in the way it intended. Honda is interested in a formal comeback and has officially registered its interest in the 2026 engine rules, having apparently kept a small research and development team actively following those regulations. F1's planned 100% sustainable fuel for 2026 and the hybrid systems battery are the items most obviously compatible with Honda's commitment to prioritising new carbon neutral technologies, which was its official rationale for leaving F1 in the first place. And with a new CEO in place since the decision was made to quit, what Honda does next seems quite open. Koji Watanabe, the HRC president, told us in 2022 that his personal opinion is that a new way of participation is necessary should Honda come back into F1. A 2026 Red Bull collaboration has been discussed, but it's looking less likely, especially as Ford has entered the picture there. An in-house Honda engine is still considered possible, but this would require finding a different team to build an engine with or for. And if that's not possible, then entering a Honda Works team for the first time since 2008 would be its only option, even though it's not thought to be something the manufacturer is keen on at the moment. The bottom line is that expectations keep increasing for a Honda 2026 F1 project, whatever form it may take. And for a long time, F1 has considered Honda exactly the kind of contender that it would be worth expanding the grid to get. Panthera Team Asia is probably the longest running prospective F1 team around at the moment. It first surfaced in 2019 with a small operation set up to conduct some initial development work and start to raise the capital required to put together a proper entry. Optimistically self-described as the greatest story in world sport that can ever be told, Panthera Team Asia is headed up by co-founders Benjamin Durand and Michael Orts. Durand, who is styled as team principal, was a senior figure in the SMP Racing and BR Engineering sports car operations, while Orts, who comes from a legal background, was a part-time driver in GTs. There's also a CEO and a chief commercial officer among its supposed team members. This project has never been taken that seriously, and a couple of years ago, after Panthera Team Asia's ambitions had already been well established, then FIA President Jean Todt indirectly dismissed it by claiming there were no credible projects around. But Panthera Team Asia has rumbled along in the background, and although the company actually started 2023 with a notice for a compulsory strike-off by Companies House, which is the UK registrar, that has been suspended after it was objected to, presumably by Orts or Durand. So for now, this project remains alive and kicking, but it's got some work to do to shed the long-term ambivalence towards it. That's our list of candidates who could contend for a potential spot on the F1 grid in the future in some form or another, with various options around to challenge Andretti's increasingly credible project for F1's blessing. But which would you like to see join the grid, whether they've been linked to F1 or not? Let us know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to our video channel to keep up to date with this story and all the other big ones in the world of Formula 1.